After Effects is very similar to Photoshop in the way it works. Like, we are going to work with layers and we have all this stuff there, but the main difference is only, let's go here in After Effects, that here we have a timeline. So if you know how to work and design inside Photoshop and Illustrator, you are going to be fine here. This is a quick reminder, and always remember that Adobe After Effects is your friend. Here we are inside After Effects, and the first thing that we need to do is to create a new composition. We can create it through this big button that we have here, or with the drop-down menu in Composition, New Composition. Always remember that you have the shortcuts here, so you can learn just by reading them. And we are going to create it, and in this panel we can write down the name and change the resolution through these presets, or directly just type here the exact aspect ratio or the exact resolution that we want, because we can work on some standard resolutions, or we can just invent it because we need this aspect or something. So yeah, that's one thing. Here we have the frames per second. If you are, for example, in Europe like I am, we tend to work in 25. Also, sometimes we work in higher frames rates, like 60, something like this, and that's because we want the movement to look more fluid and to have more detail. The last thing that I'm going to tell you is that here we have the length of the animation or the composition, and we are going to set it to 10 seconds. These are the frames, and I tend to always leave the background in black. Press OK, and here we have our first and beautiful composition. If we need to change anything, we can come here, and in composition settings we have again opened this control panel, and for example change the frame rate to 25, press OK. To change the name is as easy as selecting the composition, pressing enter, and now I can write down, for example, this, call it intro. And the next thing that I'm going to tell you is that After Effects, as you know, is a software based on layers. So here in this drop-down menu, you have all the layers that are available inside of After Effects. So we are going to create, for example, a text layer, because we are type lovers, we love typography. So this is empty now, and another way, let's just delete this layer by selecting it and press delete, and we have this toolbox here, and we also can just select the text tool and click on just our preview panel and start typing. Now I want to move this to the center of my frame, and you see that I have selected this text tool. So to go directly for our selection tool, I can go through the toolbox, or you can remember this very useful shortcut that is by pressing V. You have selected the selection tool, so now we can move this around to the center. And now I see that we need a background that makes some contrast here, because now it's not very readable. So we can make that. I'm going to deselect this layer just by clicking out of it, and to create a shape layer for our background, I can go through here, or it's more easy to just come to this drop down menu and select the rectangle tool, and if we click twice here, it's going to create, After Effects is going to create a shape layer, in this case a rectangle, that is going to be of the exact same size of my composition. Let's delete this. Also, you can just come here and with the tool selected, you can just click and drag to create this rectangle of the size that you want. So now we are going to move this back just by moving the layer around. So it's as easy as just selecting and then moving the layer. Now we have some contrast here going on. That I love contrast in design. So let's go to check the main attributes of any layer in After Effects. And if we open this, here in Transform, we have the basic attributes of any layer in After Effects. And one is the anchor point, and this is very important. We are going to check this now, how this works, the position, the scale, the rotation, and the opacity. And here you can see a stopwatch icon on any of these attributes, and this is the way inside After Effects to create keyframes, and keyframes are the base of animation. But first of all, we are going to check how the anchor point works, and for that we are going to create here an ellipse tool, and we are going to change beforehand this, that is the fill color, and we are going to, with shift hold, we are going to create a perfect circle here. But if we select the layer, this tiny icon here in the center of the frame, and this is our anchor point, and the anchor point is just the axis of any layer. And if we go here and we, for example, rotate this layer, we see that the layer is rotating around this anchor point. The same for the scale. If we mess around with the scale, it's going to always scale from this point. So in animation, it's very important where this axis is placed, and to change that we can come here for this tool, and it's called the pan behind tool. But you also see that the shortcut, let's pause here, is Y. So this is a very important one. With this tool selected, we can just move it around and place it, for example, if we need it set on the center of our layer, we can make this by I, and also this is very helpful, you can hold down Control or Command on a Mac, and this is going to look for key points on your layer, like corners like here, and also the center, and it's going to snap or stick to these points. Yeah, here it is placed in the center right now. Also, we are going to move it out of the center, and another very useful tip is to just, by holding down Control or Command on a Mac and clicking twice here on the pan behind tool, this is going to place it on the very center of our layer. So now if we, for example, mess around or scale this down, it's going to make it from the center. And this is a very important thing about After Effects and animation, and is the anchor point. Let's go directly to animate in After Effects. We are going to click here on the stopwatch for the position, and we're going to move the playhead just by holding this blue tiny area of it, and we are going to go forward like here, and we are going to move just by pressing V or by selecting the selection tool, the circle to this point of the frame. So the first lesson inside After Effects is that when you have one keyframe created or more, and you change that parameter in other moment of the timeline, for example here, this is going to instantly create another keyframe in that specific place. But then after you created any keyframe, you can move it around and The space that you have between the keyframes is the velocity of the animation. For example, if there is less space here, this is going to be quicker, and if we separate the keyframes, that means that they are going to be, this part is going to be slower. Let's make something with scale. We create the first keyframe just by clicking on the stopwatch. Let's move this around, for example, to the beginning of the timeline, and if we just select this and scale it down, this is going to create another keyframe here. Now we are going to see a very important aspect of After Effects, and is how to preview your animations in real time, because until now we were just moving around the playhead to see if something is created, just to check if the animations are working. But we really need to see things in real time. So to see things in real time, or your animations in real time, you need to always select or set your work area for the specific part of the timeline that you are working on with your animations. And the settings for that are here in the preview control panel. If you don't see anything around the interface, you always can come here to the drop down menu for window, and it's going to be here somewhere, any of the control panels. So some settings that are important is in range. I suggest you that you work with work area selected, and play from, you can just mess around or check what works best for you. Also, this is an interesting one. If you set this to full screen and you press the spacebar, this is going to make your preview just full screen. If we press spacebar again, we are going to come back to our interface. I tend to leave that unselected because I don't like that, but this is another option. So also you can just like deactivate the sound, and you can make different things like just having the spacebar to play your animations or other options here. So this is a very important panel. So the way I tend to work when I animate is I just press the spacebar, I see my animation, and when I have some conclusion, for example, I want this part of the animation to be quicker, I just press the spacebar again and move this close to this keyframe, and then check by pressing the spacebar how it feels in real time. So this is a very repetitive process to just be moving things until they feel just correct or they feel right to your eye. And yeah, that's animating. So I'm going to delete this keyframe and also I think I'm going to select on the scale, and with all the keyframes selected, I'm going to get rid of that part of the animation again. And if you press, for example, U, After Effects is only going to show you the attribute that it's animated. And now we are going to go to the easy or to smoothing our animations. You can make that by pressing F9 to change this kind of keyframes to easy ones, or also you can, with some keyframes selected, you can press right click on your mouse, and here in keyframe assistant you have this option, and if you press here in easy, also again the shortcut is a very useful one, it's F9. Now if you press the spacebar to see your animation in real time, you see that the beginning and the end of this position animation, it feels smoother. But to make it even smoother, we need to open the graph editor, and we are going to make that by pressing this button here, just clicking there. This is opened now, and we see this nice curve here. And we are always, as beginners, I recommend you that you work with the edit speed graph. You also have this option here that is called the value graph, but it's a little bit more difficult to work with. So as a beginner, I recommend you that you work with the speed graph. You have this slider to zoom in and see things more clearly, and if you select any of the keyframes, like just by click and dragging, and you drag this bezier handle here, this is making the things or the animation smoother. If we press spacebar, we are going to check this, and yeah, it's working. How it stops, it's way smoother now. If we move this to the left, we are going to increment that smooth deceleration for the end. And also, if we work with the beginning of the animation by dragging this handle or controller, we are going to make also the beginning of the animation feel more smooth. So this is very, very important to have really, really smooth animations and to control the way the movement feels through the timeline. Let's press here again to close the graph editor, and we are back to our more simplified timeline where we can just move keyframes around. So I recommend you that you work inside the graph editor to just fine-tune your animations and just make them smoother, and then when you need to move around or just to move your keyframes to another part of the timeline, you close the graph editor, and it's more easy to just make that on the simplified kind of timeline that we have here. Again, very easy to animate inside After Effects. So that was all for this very brief introduction to After Effects. I really hope that if you are a very beginner, all this serve to just not be any more afraid of this tool